Okay, so I've taken the address off for privacy purposes, but let's look into this package and see what is in here because I'm really excited about this. I know what it is, obviously. What do you think has got me so excited? It can only be... It's actually well and truly stuck in here. Okay, it can only be the new Lisa Jewell. It could have been her. And my copy is also signed. So come and join me because we're going to do a reading vlog of this right now.
Morning comes too early, hands already warm, working for a better day, trying to keep me warm. Boss man count his tally.
I have a very exciting update. So yesterday was my first day of reading It Could Have Been Her, and I took this book to bed with me last night, and it was around about midnight, and this book mentioned two characters that I recognised the name of, which was Nina and Paddy Swan. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I've read those names in a Lisa Jewell book before, and then it occurred to me that it's in the Lisa Jewell book I've just read, which is Don't Let Him In. So I had to leap out of bed, was flicking through this book, and yes, found that those two names are linked to the characters in this book. But what I actually totally failed to realise when I picked up this book, the main character in this book is called Jane Trevelyan, who is linked to Nina and Paddy Swan in the other book. Now, Jane is not playing, the main character in this book, but she does play a pretty major part. So that's really interesting to me, and I'm just wondering if this is actually a duology. Like, will the outcome of this story feed into the outcome of this story? Who knows? I had not realised they were linked when I picked this one up. Now, Lisa Jewell doesn't often do duologies or link her books from what I can tell. Her first book that she ever published was Ralph's Party, and then later on she did a sequel to that. It was a direct sequel called After the Party, using the same characters and feeding off of the story in the first book. And then later on, when she started writing thrillers, she wrote The Family Upstairs, and then as a duology, like a book that followed on after that, was The Family Remains. I really, really enjoyed that duology. It was really good. But as far as I'm aware, in her back catalogue, those are the only two sets of linked books that she has. So we may actually now have a third pair, but it remains to be seen if essentially she is just continuing with a character that maybe she liked in this book and wanted to write more about her, and maybe this character, although she's in this book, maybe this story won't actually really link back to this one other than names of the people. Like, I don't know, but I'm really, really excited to find out. So yeah, that was totally worth suddenly jumping out of bed at midnight for, to go rooting around on my bookshelf. Anyway, let's get some more of this read today and see how it goes.
People talk about difference, but I just see the same. Every heart need kindness, every soul need...
Okay, so I'm now on day 3 of reading It Could Have Been Her, and I've just reached the 200-page mark. This book is just over 400 pages, so I'm nearly at the halfway point. I've been a bit slow reading the last couple of days as I've just had quite a lot on, so I really didn't get to read much yesterday, probably about 30 pages. And on the first night I was reading it, I probably read about 30 pages again. So I've made some good progress today. I can safely tell you that if you struggled with the amount of characters that were in Don't Let Him In, you're probably going to struggle with the same thing in this book. There are a lot of characters that you're trying to follow, and even now, like at the 200-page mark, I feel like new characters' perspectives have been introduced into chapters. So that's taken a bit of effort to sort of keep hold of that. However, I am enjoying the fact that the chapters are really quite short. So you're sort of reading one point of view and then you're sort of quickly moving on to the next point of view. And you don't feel like if you're busy like I've been for the last few days, this has actually been ideal because it means I can just read a chapter here, read a chapter there, and I don't have to dedicate a huge amount of time to sort of get through a chapter. And when you have a lot of characters, if each of the characters had really, really long chapters and you've got to dedicate a lot of time to each one when you're really busy, that can be quite difficult. So in this way, it's been a little bit easier to keep hold of things, I think, in that sense. Um, I did feel after about 100 pages, I was beginning to lose a little bit of interest because I was quite excited at first that this seemed to be another book that was related to Don't Let Him In because the main character in this one, called Jane Trevelyan, is obviously one of the secondary characters in Don't Let Him In. So I thought that it might be linked to the Don't Let Him In book. But as this goes on, I don't think that these stories are really linked. I just think that Jane now has her own book, probably because Lisa wanted to explore Jane's character a bit more, which is fine. Jane seems to be quite an interesting person. Um, but there's like a lot of backstory to Jane's life that I don't think we really understand at the halfway point in this book. So I don't really know if we're going to really learn more about Jane's backstory or if there might be further books on Jane for us to learn about that. I don't know. So I'm sort of torn a little bit between like I'd like to understand Jane's backstory, but also there's so many characters in this book and there's quite a few mysteries to unravel. Whether we unravel those or if is everything going to get unravelled by the end of it, don't really know. But I think as the as I've got to about page 170, like maybe in the last 30 pages, things have sort of got a bit more exciting again, and I feel like some of these chapters have ended on cliffhangers, which have sort of made me think, oh, okay, the story's getting going again now. So that's made me a bit more excited to read it. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now on day 3. So I should imagine I'll probably be reading this for another day or two. So I will catch up with you again tomorrow.
Children laughing somewhere, sounds of better days. Keep the light inside you, don't let the darkness stay.
Okay, so I have now finally finished It Could Have Been Her by Lisa Jewell. I actually finished this book yesterday while I was watching the Silverstone Grand Prix. So there was quite a bit of time between the sprint race and then the qualifying. Like about 3.5 hours or so. No, 3 hours maybe, just over. Anyway, the sun was out. It was really lovely and warm. We had our camping chairs while we were sat there waiting for the next event. So I was like, well, I'm just going to sit here and read my book because I had got to the final 50 pages and I really needed to know what happened. Now, this book has taken me about 5 days to read, which to be honest is quite a long time for me for a Lisa Jewell book because I tend to rip through those really quickly because I really enjoy them. But also this book is like about just over 400 pages long. And you know, I normally read about 130 pages a day, but I had such a busy week last week with stuff going on. Honestly, I barely had time to read. So I think some days like I was probably reading about 30 or 40 pages. Now, I did manage to read a fair bit on day 4, but I just didn't get the opportunity to vlog it just because there was always people around me or people making noise in the house, so I just couldn't get around to filming it. But I think on day 4, I had basically said that I was sort of had gone into a bit of a lull with it, and then it had just started to get exciting again. And yeah, then it started to get exciting, so I did read it quite a lot on day 4 and really enjoyed it. So yesterday, even though I was at the Grand Prix, I brought my book along with me because I was like, I can't just leave me on a cliffhanger with just the last 50 pages to go, because the last 50 pages, let's be honest, are normally the best, because that's when they're unveiling all the stuff that we need to know. So I previously mentioned at the start of this video that I'd worked out that this book actually has some of the same characters as the book that was published the year before, which is Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. So I read this in a reading vlog a couple of weeks ago when I was reading books that my gran had given me. So that's up if anybody wants to go and see that, and I might link that video at the end of this video. But there's a secondary character in here called Jane Trevelyan. So she is actually the main character in the new book. It could have been her. And then she also mentions a character from her past, which is one of the characters that's involved in the crime in this book, and then his wife, which is alive and present in this book. So I was really, really excited because I thought, oh, is this going to be a duology? Is this going to like give more to the other story as well, like some kind of continuation with it? But that's not really what happened. I think that Lisa Jewell must have just really liked the Jane character when she sort of brought her out in this book. And she did seem like quite a complicated character in this book with probably quite an interesting back history. So what Lisa's done in this book is basically picked her out and given her her own book, really. And we can see more of her backstory in this book. Now, basically, Jane is, she's got enough money to get on with her life. She's not employed full time in any kind of job. And basically, she helped solve a crime in this book just by sleuthing around, really, on the internet. And she kind of knew somebody that her ex-husband had known who worked for the police or the secret services or something, and she was able to get information off him to help solve the crime in this book. So in this book, she's a little bit bored because she doesn't really have much to do, and she doesn't actually have any of her own children, but she does have quite a lot of stepchildren, but none of them really have much to do with her. They all kind of live far away. So she's on her own a lot with her dogs, and she just decides that she really enjoyed helping out to solve the crime in Don't Let Him In. So she then goes on and thinks, oh, actually, I'd like to do a bit more of that. So she kind of wants to become an amateur sleuth, like a private detective. So that's what happens in this book. She basically finds a lost dog, and then off the back of that lost dog, she somehow becomes involved in investigating a crime that sort of happened many, many, many years ago that the police have closed down for like probably 20 years, I want to say. And then they had reopened the case like a handful of years ago, like maybe 5-6 years ago, and then they couldn't get any further with the case, so it had gone cold again. And basically, Jane, our main character, realizes that she has a connection with the location where this crime is supposed to have happened. So that's like what the story is really about. It's about her going off, starting out as a kind of private detective, and trying to solve this crime. Now, I did say in one of my catch-up there was a lot of characters in this book. There is a lot of characters in this book, and I think that's important to mention because a lot of people complained about that in this book, which I didn't mind it so much in this book. But again, there's equally a lot of characters in this book, so it can get a little bit confusing. And the way the chapters are written, it is from the point of view of a different character. So we kind of have Jane's point of view frequently interspersed in with some of the other characters. Now, some of the characters we hear from more than once because they're kind of playing a main role in this book, and then other characters we only ever hear from them once. So they've just like got one chapter dedicated to their point of view. Personally, I don't think I enjoyed this one as much as Don't Let Him In. I really felt I was on the edge of my seat with this one, and I'd given it a 4.5, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed elements of this book, but I just don't think I enjoyed it as much as Don't Let Him In. And I've been sitting on this now for about 24 hours since I finished this book, trying to understand what it is about this one that I just, which just didn't speak to me in the same way that the last one did. And it's not that it's a bad story, it's actually pretty dark, like, and the reveal at the end is pretty dark, like, that's all good. But the fact that we used another character from a previous book, but that character, like Jane's character, we didn't expand on the previous story, which I kind of was like hoping we would. So the only connection between these two books is that we have reused a character. And then Jane, I would say, is actually a very, very interesting character, and she has what would appear to be a very dark history and backstory. But again, we don't really, really get into it too much. Like, we get snapshots of her backstory, I think, as she's investigating this crime. And in a way like this, it could have been her. I think, this is not only in reference to the fact that our main character could have been the victim, as the victim in this book was from the actual crime that occurred, but she could also have, her life could have ended up in a similar way to one of the main characters based on the fact that they shared some stuff from their back history. And that's really the only way that we're sort of learning about Jane's back history, is just as she's sort of likening it to this character that she's sort of looking at. So it almost felt like Jane was being used as a plot device, um, to explore her back history against the current crime that was going on. But she wasn't as introspective as I'd have liked. And it just makes me wonder if this Jane character is going to turn up again in any future books so we can dig deeper into her backstory. And there's like one of the points in here, I'm hoping that this is not going to be a spoiler, it's just a small character thing. But basically, we learn right at the start of this book that Jane's parents were both alcoholics, which is not the greatest start in life for her because they were like that when she was children. And that's one of the traits that she shares with one of these other women in the book, is how her parents were. And this other woman, descends into alcoholism pretty badly. And our character Jane frequently drinks in a social way, is the way that it's put across. But she never, ever does any introspection to work out if her drinking is a problem. Now, alcoholism is hereditary. You don't necessarily become an alcoholic if you've got alcoholic parents, but it can be hereditary. And the fact that, Jane is likening her life to this other character who blatantly is an alcoholic, like really, really suffers really, really badly. I would have thought that it would have been pertinent for our character Jane to examine her own drinking and work out, is that really normal? Because she frequently out throughout the book, as she's doing something, is like, oh, I'm just craving a glass of wine, or she does something difficult and she must have a glass of wine. And I think that in itself probably is not something to be questioned if we didn't learn that part of her origin story and the issues that she has in her life are because her parents are alcoholics. So I did, Lisa Jewell's really good at writing characters, and complicated characters at that have various degrees of addictions and mental health problems. So I do think that the fact that our main character never reflected on her own drinking is a bit of an oversight by Lisa. And I thought that could have played into the story for starters. um I think the other thing that was sort of bothering me about this book is I don't like books about amateur sleuths, to be honest. I'm coming to that conclusion, I think, over a couple that I've read over the last year. There was one that I read at the end of last year called The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, and there's a woman in there who is basically being armchair detective, amateur sleuth, trying to make herself into a private investigator, and that's what Jane's doing in this book. But it sort of bothers me because it's like, they're coming in to crimes, to look at crimes that lots of police and detectives have been looking at that crime for years on and off, and they've had a lot of funding and they have access obviously to all of these sources, and they've been to the crime scenes. And then these amateur sleuths come in and just spend a little bit of time on the internet and apparently solve these crimes like really quickly. And I just think that it's a lot harder than that. So that's what bothers me. And there's like a scene in this book where Jane goes to speak to somebody's psychiatrist, and she sort of says up front, oh yeah, I know about like patient confidentiality and that. And then like literally the psychiatrist caves almost immediately and starts giving her information, despite the fact this woman is not working on behalf of the police. She has no identification. She hasn't even set herself up as a business as a private investigator. She's just telling people that's what she is. And there was a similar thing that happened in The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. And at that point, I just kind of was like, no, this is not believable. Professionals don't just give up information about patients literally to anybody. Most of the time they would have to be served with some kind of legal document to make them willing, well, not even willingly, but make them give up personal information about their patients. So that sort of got to be a little bit in this book as well. So I think that I liked the fact that we were reusing a character so that we could look at her backstory, because she is quite an interesting character in the other book. But I don't think that we looked at her past in as much detail as I'd have liked to. I enjoyed the crime that she was, looking into, and the dynamics of the people involved in that. That was all really, really dark, very Lisa Jewell. Really enjoyed that. And I liked the way that the book ended. I just didn't enjoy the fact that the way that Jane was being, like casual amateur sleuth, just, picking holes in this crime, when actually we'd had a police detective who had actually, gone back to it, about 5 years before, because they'd had some concerns, and apparently this person never solved it. But, Jane just goes for a walk around the property and just like, finds evidence and solves it. And I also have a really big problem with these private investigator sleuth stories, like, from like serious private detectives like Holly Gibney that have like their own agency. That's fine, because we know that Holly has skills that other people don't have when it comes to like computer skills and stuff like that. So I don't really mind so much with that. But what this person is doing, and like what they were doing in The Maidens, it's stuff that really any high school person could do on a computer. There's nothing special about it. So you can't just go in there and disrespect the police investigation, I would say. And I kind of like lost my thread, like what I was going on to there. But I think like what I'm just trying to say is that she hasn't really got access to everything. So yeah, that's a little bit unbelievable. But I also don't like with these amateur sleuths, like when they think that they're digging something up that's pretty big and it's pretty vital to the investigation, then they put off telling the police about it, and then they just keep getting themselves deeper and deeper into it. And you think, no, that's how horror movies are made. Like, if you found something that you don't think other people have, then you take it to the police so the correct people can go and investigate it. So I don't know, that kind of like irritates me slightly, I think. So on the whole, I think I would give this a 3.75. And I gave this one a 4.5. So this is definitely my favourite one. This is not a bad book. I just think there were elements of it that don't tick the boxes of things that I like. So I'm still really excited about what she's probably going to bring out next year. I'm hoping she's going to bring the book out next year. This literally only came out on Thursday. My Waterstones copy arrived on the Tuesday, so I managed to start reading it early. But I should imagine some very dedicated fans have probably already read this by now. But yeah, if you have already read it, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. And did you read Don't Let Him In? Which one did you prefer? I'd love to know. So if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see my future content, please press the subscribe button. I've really enjoyed making this video because I absolutely love reading Lisa Jewell's work. I did actually count the other day, and this is her 24th book. So that's absolutely incredible. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.